Do you like low risk, high reward ways to win money sports betting? If you do, this video is for you. My name is Logan, and today we're going to be breaking down parlays, everything you need to know about how to be successful when betting on them. I'm a student at Harvard right now studying statistics, astrophysics, and computer science.
My boy's wicked smart.
And I am absolutely super excited to be talking to you guys today about parlays. It's one of the most fun ways to bet on sports, but it can also be one of the most profitable ways to bet on sports. So we're going to be diving into the mechanics of parlays, how they work, and more importantly, everything you need to know in order to make money by betting on them. All right, so what exactly is a parlay? With traditional sports bets, you're betting on one event to happen. So if that event happens, you win your bet. If not, you lose your bet. With parlays, you're betting on multiple events to happen. So say you have a 5-leg parlay and only 4 legs hit, you're going to lose that parlay bet, even though most of the legs hit. So because parlays require multiple events to happen as opposed to just one, the payouts are much higher than if you were to bet any of the legs of the parlay individually. So because parlays have high payouts, usually most sports bettors don't risk too much on them because they're pretty unlikely to hit. So if you're not risking a lot of money with a really high payout, that's low risk, high reward. But it's also pretty unlikely to hit. So obviously parlays and straight bets both have their own pros and cons. We'll dive into that a little bit later. But first, I think it's really important to understand how parlays work in terms of mechanics. So let's figure out how parlay payout structure works. Effectively, when you're taking a parlay, all you're doing is multiplying the decimal odds of each individual leg together, and that's the decimal odds of the entire parlay. But you might not be familiar with decimal odds, so let's do a quick introduction. Decimal odds are pretty easy to catch on to. Effectively, it's just another way of looking at what a bet pays out. For example, if you're looking at a bet that's at plus 200, the decimal odds would be 3, because you risk $1 and you're paid out $3, so 1 times 3 is 3. Or you could look at it as you risk $1, you profit $2, and you returned your $1 stake. So with decimal, you multiply the entire thing. With American, you look at it a little bit different as you get a profit percentage, and then you also take back your stake. So when you're looking at parlay payouts, they actually use decimal odds to calculate the payout by multiplying them all together as opposed to using American. So say you have a parlay that's minus 200, minus 150, and plus 100 for the 3 individual legs. The payout on that is pretty hard to calculate using American odds, but it's very easy using decimal odds. If we have minus 200, that's 1.5. So we have 1.5 times, and then we'll do minus 150, that's 1.67. And then if we have minus 100, that's going to be decimal odds of 2. So we'll do times 2. And that tells us that the decimal odds for the entire parlay are 5.01. So we'll plug that back in. And we can see the American odds for the parlay are 401. We can go over to a parlay calculator and see we get the same, very similar result of plus 400. So that's how you calculate the payouts of parlays. But that's a relatively small detail. I think it's very important to understand, but that's not going to make or break your profits. Ultimately, understanding how to bet parlays is definitely more important to understand than how the payout structure works. So let's dive into the strategy of how to make profitable parlays. In order to put together a profitable parlay, there's one incredibly important rule to keep in mind. If each individual leg of your parlay is profitable, then the parlay as a whole will be profitable. So ultimately, building profitable parlays comes down to finding profitable legs. But what do we mean by a profitable leg? When I say profitable, I mean that it has positive expected value. If you're unfamiliar with expected value, effectively, the concept is this. While each individual bet can either win or lose if you just bet it once, if you were to take that same bet over and over again a million or billion times, your return wouldn't be just one win or one loss. You'd win sometimes and you'd lose other times. So you'd average out to a percent return in the long run. That percent return is your expected value. If you pick bets at random, you're probably going to have an expected return of -4 or -5% because sportsbooks take 4 or 5% profit on each of their individual bets. Now, profitable sports bettors can get 3, 4, or 5% profit on each of their bets by finding an edge. Now, the good news is that if you are compiling these profitable bets into a parlay, the edge compiles. So if you have 3 bets that are 3% profitable, it would be 1.03 to the third power. So you'd have a 9% EV parlay, which is awesome. But the bad news is that if you have negative EV, that also compiles. So say you were to pick bets randomly, say 4 bets, and compile them together, your expected return would probably be negative 19%, because not only are you losing to the VIG once, but you're compiling it 4 times. So parlays, if you're making really bad bets, then that bad catches up with you very quickly because the edge against you compiles. But if you're taking good bets, then you can compile that edge to work in your favor. So building profitable parlays is as simple as finding profitable legs. So let's talk about the pros and cons of betting on parlays as opposed to straight bets. One of the biggest pros of betting on parlays, which also happens to be one of the biggest cons if you're a bad sports bettor, is that the expected value compounds. So if all of the legs are profitable and you compound them together, now you have a really profitable parlay. For example, let's look at these 3 home run bets that I found a couple days ago. These were all expected value monsters, so super profitable plays. This one's 25% expected value, this one's 21%, this one's 27%. So if you were to bet on each of the 3 individually, you'd return around 25% of your money in the long run. But by parlaying them together, you can go from 25% on average to 92%, since 1.21 times 1.25 times 1.27 is 1.92. So over the long term, if you took this parlay over and over and over again, you could expect to nearly double your money. And that's one of the biggest pros of parlay betting, is huge EV boosts. But one of the cons is the bigger the parlay, sure, the EV might increase, but the chance that it hits decreases. So they're pretty risky because a lot of the time, most of the time in fact, you're just going to be donating money away. Now, statistics says that the law of large numbers dominates. So if you have a big enough sample and you're taking EV parlays, you will make money in the long term. But it exposes you to a lot of variance, or ups and downs. If you're taking huge parlays, you might have one day where you make $8,000. But you can continually throw money away over the next month or two and lose every single day and be right back where you started. So there's going to be a lot of variance or ups and downs with parlay betting. I personally prefer straight betting because there's less variance, so more consistent returns. But to each their own. If you like trading the variance for higher payouts or higher expected value, all the power to you. I would just advise you to follow Kelly Criterion. So I made an entire video about Kelly Criterion a day or two ago, so please check that out. It's on the OddsJam YouTube channel, but we'll do a quick dive into it really quick so you guys have an idea of how to use that in your own sports bets and parlay bets. So with parlay betting, you can increase your expected value, but you're also going to decrease your winning chance. Over the long term, that's okay, because expected value will dominate over individual wins. But it's important to follow Kelly Criterion so you don't experience too much variance. Effectively, what Kelly Criterion does is it considers both the expected value and the win percentage to tell you how much money you should be risking on a particular play. So plays that have high expected value or are mathematically very profitable plays, you're going to want to risk more money on. Similarly, plays that are less likely to win, you're going to want to risk less money on. Those two might sound like the same thing, but really they're saying two different things. The first one is the mathematical value, the second one is your win chance. And believe it or not, those two are independent concepts. So if you go to a Kelly Criterion calculator and you fill in the blanks, first your Kelly multiplier. Effectively, this number is just a multiplier that sports bettors use to adjust the riskiness. The mathematically optimal Kelly multiplier to choose is 1, but most sports bettors choose 0.5 or 0.25 to try to be a little bit safer with their money. I'll choose 0.5 in this particular case. Then you plug in the odds of the parlay. Like I said, that parlay we were just looking at is about plus 28,000. Then the win percentage, it was only 0.7%. So that means it got us to a very high expected value of nearly 100%, but you should only risk 0.16 or around 0.2 units on it. So significantly less than 1% of your bankroll. And that makes a lot of sense. Just because this is a very mathematically profitable or high expected value parlay, because it's so unlikely to happen, you don't want to bet your house on it. If you did bet your house on it and these 3 dudes did hit a home run, you'd be a millionaire. But there's a 99.3% chance that the 3 of them don't hit a home run, and 99.3% chance you'd end up homeless. So be safe with your money. Follow Kelly Criterion in order to optimize your long-term returns. It's exactly what Kelly Criterion does. It considers both the mathematical edge and the chance of loss in order to make sure that you are making the most money in the long term. So definitely you can bet parlays. Parlays can be profitable if each individual leg is profitable, but I'd highly recommend that you use Kelly Criterion to avoid risking too much money on these parlays. Now, similar to parlays is DFS books. So let's take a quick look at DFS books so that you guys know how much money you should be risking on DFS plays and whether or not these can be profitable. All right, so now let's talk about placing parlays on DFS books or daily fantasy sports books. With DFS books, it's just another place for you to place a parlay, but there's one important difference between DFS books and traditional style sports books. Traditional style sports books will vary your parlay payout depending on how likely each individual leg is, as we just talked about. DFS books don't care what you're betting on or whether you're taking over or under, they have the same implied probability on every single leg. So in order to be profitable on a DFS book, you need to win at a higher percentage than the implied probability suggests. For example, on PrizePicks, the implied probability on a 5 or 6 pick flex is minus 118, which means you have to win more than 54.12% of your legs in order to break even and be profitable. So, betting on DFS slips, you definitely still should use Kelly Criterion. Let's talk about how to do that. So I threw together the 6 most profitable slips on OddsJam's fantasy screen. You can see the EV is 13.5% and the break-even win percentage is 2.52%. This number will vary depending on the legs that you have in your slip. This is true of all 5 or 6 big flexes on PrizePicks. So with a break-even percentage of 2.52%, we can see that the implied odds on the entire parlay, if we plug in 2.52%, the American odds are approximately 3,870. So now let's go over to our Kelly Criterion calculator. We'll plug in 3,870, and our win percentage we can see is 2.85%. So we'll plug in 2.85, and we'll keep our Kelly multiplier at 0.5 like it was before. You can see here we should wager 0.17 units on this particular parlay. So that's how you go from the OddsJam fantasy screen into going into Kelly multipliers to see how much money you should be risking on each of your PrizePicks or other DFS book slips. But yeah, definitely follow Kelly Criterion if you want to be optimizing your long-term profit. And you can see here, even though we have a very high profitability, 13.5% slip, you only want to risk 0.17 units because these PrizePick slips are pretty big long shots. 5 and 6 big flexes are pretty hard to hit. So you don't want to be risking too much, even though they're very profitable. All right, I think that covers almost everything there is to know about parlays. A few important takeaways are if each individual leg of your parlay is profitable, then the entire parlay is profitable. Also, parlays should still follow Kelly Criterion, so vary your bet size depending on how valuable the parlay is and how likely it is to hit. Definitely use the OddsJam calculators if you want help in doing this math, or you can just use the positive EV screen or the fantasy screen to do almost all of the work for you. So I think I've covered everything, but I'm sure I left a couple things out, so please feel free to comment any questions you have about parlays or profitable sports betting in general, and I'd be happy to get back to you. I hope you guys learned a lot. I appreciate you guys for sticking around to the end of the video, and I hope to talk to you guys again soon.